Hi, hey, hello, how's it going? It's Emily, and today we're going to be starting another vlog for the month of August, and I just wrapped up my most recent vlog with Shield of Sparrows and the fourth book in the American Royal series, so that's where we're picking up here, and I decided to next pick up The God and the Guisin by Sophie Kim. This is the follow-up to The God and the Gamiho, which I absolutely adored. I'm about halfway-ish through this one, having a grand time, and it is really hard to talk about this one without spoiling some things about the first one, so I will kind of talk through this a little bit carefully. So we have our same male main character from the first book, a fallen god slash detective, Sioka, and he is as grumpy as ever. It's great, and so I will just leave it at they got separated for reasons. I'm not going to talk about those because that's the end of the last book, but they got separated for reasons. He needs to find her again, or wants to find her again, and that's kind of where I'll leave that. So, and and so we'll just leave it at she has lost some memories and whatever. So she doesn't remember him. He's trying to find her again. Anyway, and so at one point, the red thread of fate binds them again, and they essentially find each other on this cruise on the River of the Dead. And there's another murder mystery, so it's, kind of following at least that part of the setup from the first one of them investigating something and needing to kind of work together to investigate something. And so it is on the blurb for this one, like, what's going on with this murder and stuff, but I don't want to talk too much about it because, again, I don't want to talk too much about the second one or give things away from what happens in the first one. So I'll just leave it at there, solving a murder on this cruise and need to work together to do that. She is in the medical profession, and so she's working in the health clinic on this cruise. And it's kind of interesting because it's like basically a cruise for the dead. And your karma determines whether or not you are working on this ship or whether you are a passenger on this ship. And anyway, but the ship is super interesting. And again, our main character is back. Sioka is grumpy as ever. And he essentially kind of needs to re-find his love for a very different female main character. And kind of rekindle what they had. And so, they're trying to go through that. They have this red thread of fate going on, and so they're trying to get to know each other again, trying to solve this murder mystery that they need to solve by the time the cruise is over, etc. Anyway, it's just been so much fun. I'm having a grand time with this one. And definitely want to pay attention to anything else that Sophie Kim puts out. And I was actually realizing, as I was looking at the front of this, that she does have another duology. So I need to see what that's about and see if that sounds interesting. But I definitely am thoroughly enjoying this duology for sure. It's just the humor, the characters, the situations, it's just a good time. It's just a good time. So I'm going to keep working on this. I have some cleaning to do in the bedroom. So I'm going to listen to this while getting some of that done. And yeah, come back when I have either read some more or maybe finish this one. So I have now finished. It's actually upstairs, and I'm too lazy to go get it. But I have finished The God and the pronunciation I think is actually closer to Guishin. I was double checking with the audiobook. I think it's closer to Guishin. by Sophie Kim. Had such a delightful time with it. The banter, just their dynamic, the mystery, being on this cruise ship. It was just so much fun. Would highly recommend this duology, especially if you're looking for something with K-drama vibes. Such a fun duology. And Sophie has some other books out that I feel like I should check out. And then I was looking on her website, and I think the next one is a sports romance, but set in a fantasy world, like it's some fantastical sport, and there's a rival, is it Rivals to Lovers? Some sort of fantastical sports romance, and I'm like, that sounds fun. Anyway, so an author to check more out from for sure. And I'm going to insert a clip in just a moment. Let me give a little bit of context. One of the prompts for Amy and Kim's TBR game was to scroll social media and find a book that way. And I didn't mention this in my August TBR video because the live show was a little bit into August. It was a few days into August, and I'd already posted my TBR video at that point. So I didn't mention it, and I just, was like, I'll just worry about this in the vlogs. And I actually filmed the clip when I was filming clips for my previous vlog, my most recent one that included my trip to Boston. And I realized too late that I actually would probably read the book in the next vlog, the current one that I'm filming now. And so I've already filmed the clip, but let's go back and I'll roll that clip of scrolling social media to find a book. And it can be a book on your physical, you can limit it to what's on your physical TBR. That's what I did because I want to focus on my physical TBR and the books that I have. So I scrolled Instagram until I found something that was actually on my physical TBR. So I'll roll that clip now. And so I've opened up Instagram. Eventually I will learn how to actually screen record. But for the moment, we're just gonna go through together.
Until I see something that is on my TBR. We're just gonna quickly scroll through. No, nothing there. Let's see if there's anything here. I don't think so. So we're just gonna, I do wanna watch Wednesday, but that'll happen in October. Okay, I don't think there's anything on this TBR cart. Okay. Let's see. Don't think there's anything here. Let's see. Hopefully this won't take too long. I don't have that one. Let's see. Don't have those. That will eventually come, but I do not have a physical copy yet. Don't think I have any of those either. Let's see. I don't have that. Okay. Let's see. I don't have any of these either. Maybe I'll just have to fast forward through them.
Oh. I do have this edition of Silver Cloak. Okay. Sure. Let's see if we can fit this in by the end of the month. I'll kind of zoom in just a little bit here. But this is the Fairy Loot edition of Silver Cloak. I'll eventually get it out and put it on the list. But, okay, so we have picked the social scroll read for accomplishing that prompt. Hopefully I'll be able to fit it in. There is so much I want to fit in by the end of the month, but we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen for the sake of the team. So I was very excited to get Silver Cloak by L.K. Stevens. So I have been reading this. I'm a solid chunk in, more than a third, maybe approaching the halfway mark. And I've been having so much fun with this one. And so in this one, we're following Saffron. And when she was younger, her parents were killed by, what is the force called? The Blood Moons. And so her parents were killed by the Blood Moons. And so she resolves to join her society's kind of, police force isn't really the right word, but it's a group that works to help solve and prevent crime. And so, I mean, maybe that's kind of a way to think of it. And they do train at this academy, and she's trying to be a silver cloak and has basically lied as far as her magical abilities. She's basically lied with the experience that she has to be able to get into this group. I think when she initially started, you didn't need to have as much in terms of credentials to kind of get into this particular group, but it became more stringent later. And so she basically lied to get her way into the Silver Cloaks. And so her lie is discovered, or someone, the person running the school has become aware of her lie. And they're doing this kind of, is it an exit trial or something? They're doing this test. And so they're running this kind of simulation with blood moons, like fake blood moons, and trying to get some hostages out. And that's kind of one of their trials. And in this process, some things happen, and it's revealed. The person who's aware of it, the person running the school, basically brings her in and is like, I'm aware that you have lied. And is talking to her about why and what her magical abilities truly are. And she's kind of faked some things to get around certain things, but she has a conversation, and basically the person who runs the school offers to have her, they come up with a scheme to go undercover in the Blood Moons. And so she basically leaves the Silver Cloaks. Everyone else essentially thinks she's been kicked out. No one else knows that she's actually going to be going undercover in the Blood Moons to try to get some information. And so she goes through with this scheme and, gets into the Blood Moons, is branded, and they think that they will be able to trust her because the brand is it's a magical brand that is supposed to basically kill the person if they do something that works against the Blood Moons. But what they don't know is that certain magical things, basically magic doesn't have an effect on her. So basically certain magical spells aren't going to affect her. This brand isn't going to affect her. Things like that. And so that's why she's going to be the perfect candidate to actually go undercover and be able to do some things that no other person has been able to do undercover to try to get information out of the Blood Moons. Anyway, so it's been fun. I love undercover scheming, politics. I love all that. And of course, she's starting to be less hostile or starting to find some common ground with the person that kind of brought her in and is the son of the leader of the Blood Moons. And so she needs to be very careful, but they're finding some common ground, and he's, I'm assuming, going to be the love interest here. And she's going to find out that things are more complicated, and I'm excited to see what those things are and what she needs to navigate here. But the setup is one that I thought would be very successful for me, and so far, so good. Having a grand time. So I'm gonna keep going with this one, and I think I'm gonna do the second book in the Jasad Heir duology, the Jasad Crown. I think I'm gonna do that one next, but having a grand time. We'll check in once I have more of Silver Cloak read. So I have finished Silver Cloak by L.K. Stephen. Had a really, really fun time with this one. Enjoyed the world, the magic, and the characters. Just had a ton of fun with this one. There are some things in here that need to be very carefully executed, and I still did enjoy the execution of those things. So what I mean is, for example, the vision at the beginning. So in that test or trial at the beginning, she gets a vision of something that's going to happen. And so, that, depending on how it's done, can take away from things, because in every tense moment, in every moment you think that something dangerous could happen, you as a reader and she as a character remember, okay, well, I know I get through this because I haven't I haven't actually done what I saw in that vision, or that what I saw in that vision hasn't happened yet. And so I know I get through this. But I think she does some interesting things and some interesting twists with it to still make those moments really tense, or still kind of think you're going in one direction and then kind of change course and direct things in a different way. So I think she did some really clever things with that, and still made it something that didn't take away from some of those tense moments, or moments that otherwise maybe some of that could have been taken away. But again, love the magic. Sometimes it's just fun to go back to an old school wand magic system. But enjoyed the magic, enjoyed the characters, enjoyed the spy situation and what that brought to the plot. It was just a lot of fun. And yeah, again, definitely very excited to read the next one. I will briefly mention that I've been reading The Jessad Crown. I'm a solid chunk into this. It is a chunky book, so I'm hoping to get a good chunk more of this read today. Maybe finish up tomorrow. We'll see. There's definitely a lot I want to read by the end of the month, so we'll see. But I'll just briefly mention this because I can only say so much about this. And I did talk about the Jessad Heir in a previous vlog, my latest one that included, actually no, I think I included in the one at the end that wrapped up my July read. So it would have been a couple of reading vlogs ago, towards the very end. I did talk about the Jessad Heir. I'll briefly just give a quick mention, but if you want more thoughts on it, you can go back to that one. But the Jessad Heir follows Sylvia, and well, it follows a couple of characters, and you also follow Aaron, the love interest. And in this one, you're getting a couple of other perspectives. Occasionally, it's still mostly Sylvia and Aaron, but you have a couple of other characters here, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But Sylvia is the heir to the Jessad crown, but the kingdom of Nizal, there was an incident there. A lot of the Jessad royalty were killed, and they thought Sylvia died in that incident, but she was able to escape, and she is kind of just living her normal life, like trying not to draw attention to herself. And one day the Nizal heir comes around looking for a champion to represent Nizal in this upcoming set of trials. And so for reasons, she accidentally reveals that she has magic, which draws his attention to her because magic is being targeted in this world. The Jessadis, who are the only group left to still have magic in their blood, are being targeted. And so she isn't supposed to reveal that she has magic. And so he makes a deal with her to spare her life if she's willing to be the representative of Nizal in this set of trials. And the reason he wants her to do that is because there are some Jessadi rebel groups that are trying to track her down, and he wants to basically attack these, or get a hold of these rebel groups and stop this rebel activity. And so if she's the Nizal champion, he can kind of use her as bait to bring these rebel groups in and then go from there. And so he wants her to basically be used as bait in this trial to attract these rebel groups. And anyway, so they're training for this trial. You go through this set of trials in the first book. It's super entertaining. Their tension, it's definitely slow burn. Their tension is super great. The world building, the magic is super fun. And I'm definitely still enjoying all of those things in this second one. So you pick up right where we leave off, or pretty much right after we leave off. Like, it's very quickly following the events of the end of the Jessad Heir, which again, I won't talk about because I don't want to spoil anything. So that's why there's only going to be so much I can say about this one. I mentioned there are a couple of new perspectives, and the reason for that is that, and again, I'll just say it's for plot reasons, but our characters are separated. And so there are a couple of key things in some other places that the author wants us to keep track of that are going on with a couple of other characters that are not in Aaron or Sylvia's proximity. And so, they as characters wouldn't see what's going on there. And so she's added these perspectives to kind of add those couple of other elements in a couple of other parts of the world. But as I said, our characters are separated, and there's definitely been some, I'll just say, tension from what happened at the end of the last book. And so we're dealing with the repercussions of that. And we're dealing with these Jasadi rebel groups. We're dealing with rising tensions and, our main characters from the first book and some of the people that they were around trying to deal with the ramifications of that. And I'm having a grand time. This book is just so good. This duology is so good. Again, writing is absolutely gorgeous, and just the world building is just lush and so much fun. Would highly recommend. So I am excited to keep going with this one. As I said, I got a good chunk to go. I'm on page 329, and I'm still about halfway through because it's about 650 pages. So yeah, we're right at about halfway. Anyway, so there's probably not going to be much more I'm going to be able to say about this. I will check in once I finish it and just let you know if the last half of it was still everything I wanted it to be, and to let you know my feelings about how things wrapped up. But and once I finish that, this will be a duology completed, so that'll be great in terms of trying to get as many series checked off the list this year as I can. And the next couple of books I want to read as well one of them will wrap up a series, one will continue a series. So, I'm wanting to get as much of that done this year as possible. So we'll check in once I finish this one and move on to the next one. So we have about half an hour left in the Jasad Crown. So I'm just gonna hang out on this couch for a little bit and finish it. So let's finish the Jasad Crown, and then I'll talk about my final thoughts. Finished the Jasad Crown. This is such a fun duology. I had such a great time with the last part of this book, and everything culminating and getting so intense, and the relationships between the characters, and just how everything turned out for them. I adore this series. Would highly recommend. And I think the next one I'm going to go for is the next book in the Sandsea trilogy. This is by Chelsea Abdullah and starts with The Stardust Thief. I had so much fun with The Stardust Thief. I read it a while ago, though. It took a while for Ashfire King to come out, several years. Because I think The Stardust Thief came out in 2022, maybe 2023, but I think it was 2022. And yeah, because I was in my one-bedroom apartment, so it would have been 2022. And so it's been a minute. I did refresh myself on what happened in The Stardust Thief just to make sure I was remembering some of the key things. But I think I'm going to start on the next one. So The Stardust Thief follows Luli, and she is ultimately rescues the prince out of a situation and is taken to the palace and given basically the task of finding a Djinn relic for the king. He basically kind of forces her into finding this relic for him. So she sets off on an adventure herself, her Jinn bodyguard and one of the princes and one of the prince's bodyguards, and they all set off on an adventure across the Sand Sea to retrieve this relic. Of course, they come across all sorts of mayhem along the way, and the ending of that one was absolutely bonkers. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to continue that one. So I think the next one is going to be, and I'm not going to talk about what happened at the end, but I think they're going to find themselves, and I think the second one is probably mostly taking place in another location that they have found themselves in, and they're integrating themselves into this new place. There's new politics to learn, new tensions that are broiling to the surface that they need to, or that they're now a part of and need to help resolve. And yeah, so I'm excited. I'm pumped. I think the first one was definitely very much an ode to storytelling. It's inspired by stories from 1001 Arabian Nights, and definitely the perfect summer Middle Eastern inspired fantasy. So definitely the perfect time to be picking up the next one. I think I love reading Middle Eastern fantasy in particular in the summer because it's usually hot desert settings, and I love Jinn and magic, and I don't know. Chelsea Abdullah makes such a lush and wonderful world in the first one. Such lovable characters, or at least very intriguing characters. And yeah, so I'm gonna continue with the Ashfire King. I don't have a physical copy, so I'll pop an image of the cover here just so that you know what book I'm referring to. The Fairy Loot one will be on its way to me at some point in the near future, like within the next month or so. I'm expecting it, so hoping to hear about that one very soon. I also need to read or want to finish the duology that starts with Lore of the Wild. I'm also going to be getting the second book, Lore of the Tides, and that's just a duology, so that one will finish up with Lore of the Tides. I'll also be getting the Fairy Loot copy of Lore of the Tides in that same time frame, and I would like to finish that duology while it's still warm. I think this one's very heavily going to involve water, from what it seems like, based on the cover and the synopsis. So very much feels like a summer fantasy, even though the first one was very much a fall vibes fantasy, but I think this one feels more summer. So I feel like a summer transitioning into fall is the perfect time to read it. So I want to do that. I also need to read A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young, if I can. I don't know if I'm going to get it in time from the library, so I'll need to figure out if I want to use a credit on it or how I want to approach that, because that was what I was planning to do for one of the prompts for Amy and Ken's TBR game, was to read, at least for our Team Centaurs, one of the prompts was to read a magical realism book, and that's one of the few actually that's on my physical TBR right now. So I'm hoping I can fit that one in before the live show as well, which happens on Sunday, and we need to submit the information the day before. So I'm hoping that I can read the Ashfire King and then maybe sneak in A Sea of Unspoken Things really quickly before the live show, or before we need to submit the information. Again, I doubt my hold's gonna come in from the library, so we'll see if I want to either just give up the points or use a credit and get to it a little bit sooner. But anyway, for now, it's time for the Ashfire King. So it has been a minute. I didn't film at all over the long weekend. We had, someone was over. We also went to go hang out with some friends. Our neighbors actually moved to a different house recently. They're still close by, fortunately, because they're a good friend of ours, so I'm very excited that they're still really close by, but they have moved to a new house, and so we went to go see them and check out their new house, and they had a housewarming barbecue for us, which was very sweet. So that was a lot of fun. Anyway, great weekend. Did not check in at all, which means that I have now read The Ashfire King, A Sea of Unspoken Things, and I'm halfway through Lore of the Tides. So we're gonna catch up. So Ashfire King was so much fun. I just love Middle Eastern fantasy so much. The magic, the lore, the world building, so good. Chelsea Abdullah does such a good job here. And again, you can tell she very much is still writing an ode to storytelling here. It's a little bit less of a focus than in the first one, but still very much there. Love our characters, and you can see how, even though we're in a different place, going on a different adventure, trying to accomplish a slightly different task or set of goals, you can see how the second one fits together with what happened in the first one to culminate in what's going to be going on in the third one to combat the big bad evil. You know what I mean? So the first two are going to fit together, I think, in a really interesting way in the third one to make things really exciting. So I'm very excited to check out the third one in that series whenever it comes out. Hopefully we won't have to wait as long for the third one, but you know, is what it is. I'm very excited to get that book whenever it comes, if it comes. Hopefully it comes. But very excited to continue that series. So I then read A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. I read the entirety of this, and again, wasn't checking in, but had to read this quickly and within a certain time frame so that I could submit it for Amy and Ken's TBR prompts. I submitted this for magical realism. This is actually slightly less magical realism than some of her other recent books I've read. It still is magical realism, but slightly less so than some of the other ones. But I figured it might be because of the synopsis and some of her other recent books that have come out. But anyway, in this one we're following James, and James is a twin. Her twin brother actually passed away in some sort of accident not too long ago. So she is back in her hometown to kind of deal with some of his affairs, tie up some loose ends, but really she thinks that there's something more that went on. And this is kind of where the magical realism, the slight magical element comes in here, really, is with the connection that she has with her twin brother. And it seems like he's still trying to kind of reach her in some sort of way and tell her that there was something more going on. And so some little weird things are happening, not creepy things necessarily, but just little odd things are happening to her. She's seeing certain things or getting certain feelings. Her intuition is telling her certain things. She's maybe hearing certain voices or something, seeing certain things that are telling her to really push into what happened to her brother, that she's not really buying the story that is being told. And so she's back in her hometown to help. Her brother was he was a photographer, and he was actually working on a science project with I forget what organization he was working with, but he was using his photography for this science project for this organization to document animals in this area. And so she was helping kind of wrap up some of that, wrapping up some financial things, but also talking to certain residents of the town, catching up with people that she grew up with. And it's also clear that she was running from something and she really hadn't been close to her brother in a while. And so as soon as she could get out of town, she wanted to do so because she was kind of running from an event that happened when they were younger. Not when they were young, it was like close to her going to college, like sometime in her high school years, some sort of event that keeps getting referenced happened. And so she was running from that, went to art school, has been in San Francisco ever since. And so so there's some friends of hers and someone that she kind of had a romantic connection with that she kind of just upped and left and abandoned. And so some people in town were kind of hurt by that. And so she's trying to kind of mend some fences, so to speak, and kind of, rebuild some connections with people in town and kind of re-sow some goodwill as she's trying to wrap up some of her brother's affairs. And so, of course, as she's starting to dig into certain things, you know, she's asking certain questions, she's getting bits and pieces of information, she's starting to piece together some things, and the person that she had this romantic connection with is very much involved in helping her find some of these things out. So they're kind of reconnecting a bit over the course of doing this. They're talking to law enforcement about certain things, so they're drawing in law enforcement and other characters from this town to help. And I just love Adrienne Young. Like, she just, every time, no matter what style of book it is, she's written like these kinds of style, magical realism, contemporary stories, but also just pure fantasy with the fable world. And every time she just sucks me in. Like, I am just into the story. I'm there. I'm with our character. I'm with James in the woods, looking at where her brother was found. I'm feeling what she's feeling. I'm, you know, feeling the tension that she's feeling going around talking to people in town who maybe are not really wanting to talk to her after she kind of abandoned the town. Anyways, like, she just sucks me in every time, and this was no exception. I really enjoyed the character work here. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the mystery. It just all came together so nicely. I love Adrienne Young so much, and have enjoyed literally every book of hers that I've read. So, not a surprise that I enjoyed this one as well. And then finally, I am halfway into Lore of the Tides, and this is going to be the last book for this vlog before I turn to filming things for September and getting that started. I might actually start the first clip here in just a minute, but this will be the last book in this vlog. So we pick up where we left off after Lore of the Wilds, and again, I'm not going to spoil the first one, so don't worry. It's hard to talk about second books in a series. This is a duology, so this is the final book in the series. And so we pick up where we leave off, and in the first book, our main character, who is human, lives in a human settlement, but in kind of a fae world. Through circumstances, she is brought to this library that, due to a curse, the Fae can't enter, but they want to catalog everything that's in this library, and they want her to retrieve certain grimoires, certain magical books. And so in that process, she basically is kind of learning about her own magic that is starting to come to the surface, and she's starting to learn more about this world. There are a couple of different Fae that are kind of involved in this process, and we pick up where we leave off. So she's in a bad situation, you know, doesn't know who she can trust kind of thing, and she finds herself, I'll just say, and you can tell from the cover, I'll pop the image of the cover here. It's definitely a very nautical one. She is on a ship for portions of this, so she is on a ship going around to different places. She ultimately needs to basically find another magical item in order to help a situation and kind of hopefully gain her own power and magic and be able to control things enough to be able to help improve the situation for humans where she's from. And so that's the ultimate goal, is for her to be able to help the people where she came from and places like it. If there are any other places like that one. Anyway, whatever. And so she is basically on a quest to find something. And anyway, learning who she can trust. She's getting thrust into various situations along the way for different reasons. And, you know, again, finding out, you know, who can she trust? How does she learn to trust her instincts? That kind of thing. It's just been fun. It's not, I think, the greatest duology ever, but it has been just a lot of fun, and I think this is a great one to wrap up summer reading with because it does feel very nautical, but it is also a fae story, which I typically associate with and read more of in the fall than any other time. So I think this is a great transition book for me for the moment. So I'm gonna keep reading this one, let you know how it wraps up, and then wrap up this vlog, and then yeah, jump right into September vlog. So we'll check in once I have read more of Lore of the Tides. Realizing while editing this that I never actually finished the vlog out and made a final clip. So here we are. It's a good bit into September, but I'm finally getting around to finishing the editing of this one. And I did finish Lore of the Tides a little bit end of August, early September. And yeah, just had a fun time with this. Again, not the greatest duology, but it is super fun. And very glad I read that as kind of a transition into fall story. I think it was absolutely perfect for that. So yeah, would recommend if you're just looking for a fun time and a transition fantasy into summer to fall, would recommend. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me as I have read a bunch of things for summer. It's been a grand time. I love reading for the summer. Very excited to get into, and I'm now into fall reading, which again is peak for me. So be sure to subscribe to see some of my fall vlogs and what I get up to reading in my favorite time of the year to read. And I will leave my Instagram down below, as well as more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.